On today's episode, Michael and Ryan talk about their misadventures in homebrewing. Cheers.
Hi, and welcome to episode 1 of the Brewthers-in-Law podcast, where beer is thicker than water. Join us on our journey of discovering homebrewing, craft beer, and more. My name is Mike, and I'm joined by my co-host and brother-in-law, Ryan. How are you doing today, Ryan?
Not too bad. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to finally get this thing up and running.
I know, excited.
So Ryan and I are both amateur homebrewers who are excited about beer and homebrewing. So on Brewthers-in-Law, we aren't going to be looking to act as authorities, having the last word on the subject, but instead just to share our experiences with you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we hope that you'll share with us too, so that we can all learn and grow and enjoy this wonderful hobby together. So for starters, Ryan, why don't you just maybe talk a little bit about your level of experience with homebrewing?
Well, I've been brewing since college, which has been a long time now. I'm getting old.
Longer than you'd like to admit.
Longer than I like to admit, for
Me
sure.
too, my friend.
So I started brewing probably about 2011 with college roommates, fraternity brothers of mine. Did a couple kits that we bought at the local store, and then we started expanding a little bit here and there. Once I got married and living in a tiny apartment, it became very hard to brew. So I did mead instead, which is actually very easy because it's only gallon batches. And then once we bought the house, which was the rule my wife gave me, I could brew once we had a basement. Been brewing since then, and that's been about 4 years now, going back into brewing.
Has it really?
It's really been 4 years, and
Damn.
I've made my own recipes from scratch, a lot of them, and as far as I can tell, everyone tells me they're pretty good. So I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job.
Well, we don't like to hurt your feelings.
I appreciate that.
No, I've drank much of this man's beer, and it is very good.
Yep. And what about you, Mike?
So for me, I started brewing. I actually remember my first batch. It was in later college. I brewed it on my parents' electric stove, and it took 2 hours
I can imagine.
to get the water boiling. I started with kits. Then I hooked up with my roommate at the time. After my roommate and I got an apartment. He was a way more experienced home brewer. We started brewing together. I learned a lot from him, and we brewed kind of through for a couple of years through the rest of college, quite often. But I was kind of the Padawan. Then I stopped for a long time, for many, many years. Got married, moved into a house, and my wife and I, Haley and I, have just recently started, just this year, homebrewing again in our house. So, I had a first, like Michael Jordan, I had my first career, retired for a while, and then I was like, I can't quit the sport.
No, it's hard. and also like it's hard when you do brew and then you stop for a while and you just feel the urge to want to brew.
Yes, funny you mention it, because the topic of today's show is misadventures in homebrewing.
Oh, we've had plenty.
And I think, anyone who has done more than one batch of beer, or maybe just one batch of beer, has experienced such a misadventure. So a brief overview of the podcast before we dive into that. Episode formats on Brewthers-in-Law will range from discussions about our own approaches to homebrewing, samplings of specific styles of beer and or specific breweries, as Ryan and I try and learn a bit more about the world of craft brewing. Recipe episodes in which we will try our hand at brewing specific styles or just making unique, tasty spins on recipes. And then we will share those recipes, our results, and our experiences through that process. Again, good, bad, or ugly. And then finally, fun discussions on just the lighter side of beer and brewing. And so again, in that vein, today we are going to be sharing some of our worst misadventures. So,
what's a misadventure?
What is a misadventure, you ask? Merriam-Webster defines a misadventure as an unlucky event or occurrence.
Well, you went in the dictionary.
I went there. A bad experience or accident that is usually minor. I got to be honest, I kind of don't like this definition. Vocabulary.com has one that I like a little better, or it's a blurb. It says, kids are always having misadventures. Falling into a pit of mud, getting stuck between slats and a fence, a monkey stealing the shirt off your back. Never had that happen.
No.
All classic misadventures. The word is rooted in the French word, mesaventure, which is probably not how the French say it, which translates to turn out badly. Some misadventures are not only embarrassing, or are only embarrassing, while others are exhausting and sad. The worst part, you can't prevent a misadventure because they happen by chance.
I mean, I like the second one better because that kind of more spot on. When you read the other one from the dictionary, because they're not minor for me.
Like,
in a lot of my misadventures, they're definitely not minor.
I feel like, too, at least from my understanding of it and what I feel like is kind of colloquial usage of the word, it more closely captures it, particularly like the comedy of it. Like, if a kid falls into a pit of mud, it might not be fun for the kid, but it's definitely fun for you if you're watching. And I feel like that's kind of a key element of a misadventure where it may not be fun for you in the moment, but it's often hilarious after the fact. And it's, I think, often hilarious to an outside observer.
Well, I do have actually one story where when it did happen, nobody was happy at the time. But now everyone that was part of it, or at least was there when it happened, can laugh at it, including myself. I laugh at it all the time now.
All right. So I guess with that in mind, we're going to move on to our intro segment, the first sip. We're just going to kind of dip our toes in to this topic and settle down and get comfy here. So for the first sip, Ryan, I would like to know what your favorite piece of misadventure media is. I think there are a lot of great examples. Shows like Curb Your Enthusiasm, movies like The Hangover, even some classic literature like Candide or Don Quixote, I think fall into the category of misadventure media. So what is your favorite?
I'm going to go old school claymation and go with Oh No, Mr. Bill Presents.
I have no idea what that is.
So, for those who don't know, Oh No, Mr. Bill Presents is a claymation, like, clown doll that's probably like a foot tall. And it literally is him just going through a day and something bad happens to him, in which his response before it happens is, "Oh no!" And his name is Mr. Bill. So, the show is Oh No, Mr. Bill Presents. So, literally, he'll go on adventures and walking down the street, and someone would be walking, a crowd would walk through, and he just looks up and like, "Oh no!" and it gets trampled. And because it's claymation,
that's the whole show?
You literally over and over again. It's all it is, and him getting
That's
something
so
bad
good.
happen to him over and over and over again.
my
I
God.
love the show. It's probably back in like the 90s.
Okay.
It was like with I think Mad TV was part of it.
Claymation wasn't, yeah.
Yeah. I think Mad TV had a part in it.
Okay.
We're helping it out with it. So,
Wow.
what about you?
Man, claymation.
I know. I
Great
went
throwback.
old school.
For a second, I thought I heard claymation, my first thought was Wallace and Gromit. I know you're a big Wallace and Gromit
I
guy,
do
too.
love me some Wallace Gromit. Unfortunately, my wife doesn't.
You know, I am surprised that you didn't choose The Big Lebowski, which I would classify
that
as
is a great one.
Classic misadventure movie. Mine is also a movie, Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Classic misadventure.
A classic, yeah.
Brave Sir Robin, run away.
Brave Sir Robin, yeah. And even like the ending, it's like the whole thing is just a big silly farce at the end of it.
No, classic movie. Great choice.
That's one of my favorite comedies of all time. I feel like it's in that class or that unique brand of comedy that does not age. You know, there's a lot of comedies from our childhood you go back and watch. It's kind of cringy. This, it's got staying power.
I was about to say, and that was even before really our childhood, because that was back in the 80s. Like, I mean, I was probably 2, if that.
Well, yeah. I was...
negative something?
I was negative, yeah. I was in the negatives. Okay, so just briefly to introduce we've introduced the topic now. And then, so what we're going to do, Ryan and I are each going to share a story from our own brewing experience of, kind of one of these classic misadventures. Take a short break, and then we're each going to share one more story.
And there's plenty more to come. Don't worry, we'll have more episodes like this.
I was going to say, I feel like this is the type of episode that where the list of possible topics grows the more that we brew. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how the episode is going to go. Ryan, would you like to start us off with your first infamous misadventure?
So my first one, and like I said, this was one that when it happened, it was not fun at all. But we all laugh at it now. So as I said earlier, there was a point in time where I brewed mead. For those who don't know what mead is, it is honey wine. You get your water temperature, you put in honey, you chill it, you pitch your yeast to make the alcohol pretty much, and then you let it sit. And then you bottle it, let it age, and you're done. That's mead in a nutshell. And when you do only 1 gallon batches, it doesn't take up a lot of space. I was doing a lot of it at the time.
I have a feeling that is not going to be it in a nutshell in this story.
No. But I will say mead does come up many times in my misadventures. So So the first one I had was, again, early in my brewing of mead. I was trying to get as much as I can of the mead when I was re-racking it. So when I was transferring it from the fermentation bottle where the yeast was making alcohol to transferring it out of that so it could age a little more in another container. So I was trying my darndest to get as much of it out because I didn't want to lose any. It's meat. It's expensive stuff when you buy it at a store. You buy a bottle of that at the store, for a regular bottle, it's like $13 for one bottle. I'm like, oh. So I kept doing it, and I was getting as much as I could. And I had put this mead that I made, it's a pumpkin spice mead that was really good, in a Grosch bottle, which is one of those bottles where it has a lid attached to it so you can snap it tight and shut.
Pop cap.
Yep, little pop cap. So, for those who don't know, yeast eats the sugar, then turns into alcohol. The more sugar you have, the more alcohol you have. But the more the yeast eats the sugar, a pressure builds up.
From all the carbon dioxide.
From the carbon dioxide that is created from it making alcohol. So, it builds up a lot of pressure if you don't have a certain lid on top that lets out the air, or you crack it open to let some air out. I did not do that with this mead. And I had my father and mother-in-law over. We were playing cards, the four of us, my wife, Mallory. And I offered, I'm like, hey, I made this pumpkin spice mead. Mallory, who does not like mead, likes it. Do you guys want to give it a try? And they're like, sure, we'll try a little sample. So I was in the kitchen, I grabbed the bottle, I popped the cap, and poof, Mount Wanahakalugi from Finding Nemo in my face. This was
Did it actually hit you in the face?
Yes. It was a 1 liter bottle. It was literally gone. It exploded completely in the kitchen.
Just vaporized.
It went everywhere in the kitchen. The counters were covered. I was covered. The ceiling, the floor, everything was covered in mead.
How about your guests?
Nope, they were in the dining room, so they were safe. So I was good.
That's lucky.
With that part at least.
You might have never made mead again.
No, well, this was one of the moments where my wife looked at me and said, "Not until we have a basement." And like I said, I have multiple stories with brewing mead and having a misadventure as described on vocabulary.com. So I was very sad. I mean, it was a full 1 liter bottle and it was really good. I have not made this since then.
Yeah.
But
and this was in your apartment, right?
Yes. So we were like in a 2-bedroom apartment.
Then there's the cleanup.
Well, thankfully, the kitchen is a little better than
you want
carpet.
That security deposit back. Oh, so it all went so up that none of it got on the carpet.
Well, I was in the kitchen. So it's all laminate floor. So it's all that.
Yes,
so it was fairly easy to clean up, but it did smell like pumpkin spice in that kitchen for about 6 months.
I feel like it makes it so bad because pumpkin spice is such a... It's not a bad smell, but it is like a strong...
It's a known smell. Yeah. Like you smell it like pumpkin spice, you know.
Right. It's just I imagine Mallory getting out of bed every morning, making some tea and going...
pumpkin spice still.
Right.
No, it was bad.
Still not gone.
My wife does not let me live it down to this point. And we do laugh at it even to this day. I bring it up and she'll bring it up to me. It's like, oh yeah, you just wasted a whole bottle of meat again, didn't you? So, I mean, it sucked, but it's a misadventure and I learned from it because you don't want the yeast to go into your bottle because it builds pressure and that's bad. And I do have more stories similar to this.
Yeah. At least if you bottle with some yeast in there, you want to control the amount of sugar that's getting in.
So even now to this day, I still make mead to this day. I actually just bottled one, yesterday or 2 days ago. And I still will actually go down multiple times a day and just pop the cork top because I just do old Scotch bottles. Pop the cork top. All right, let's pressure out. Put it back on. Done. And I listen to make sure I hear a whoosh noise. I'm like, okay, it's still building pressure. Keep testing it. Keep checking it. And once I no longer hear that, I set it off to the side and let it age. I don't touch it for about usually 6 months a year.
It's interesting that because I know you let your meads sit for a really long time before you bottle them. It kind of amazes me that do you think they get kicked up when you bottle, and that's why they like reactivate and start fermenting again? Like, how does that happen?
I'm not sure. Again, we're not professionals here, but like I know when I was doing it the bad way with this explosion, I was like tipping the container. So like I was siphoning the beer out into the other container and like tipping it so I get as much as I can out. But generally you want to lay it flat so like all the yeast just settles to the bottom. And then when you're siphoning it, you're not getting that muck on the bottom with all the yeast. You're just getting all liquid pull out.
Leaving the yeast cake in the fermenter.
Yep, exactly. So some of it still gets through. I mean, like I said, I still get some of it and have issues. That's why I check my meads. But like, it's not bad. I haven't had any issues. That's me knocking on wood. Haven't had any issues since then. But like, it's still like, you know, I'm if it ever happens again, my wife's good.
I was literally waiting for you to say that and just to hear something explode in the room next to us.
We'll put that a sound effect in the background post-production or something. But yeah, so that's, and like I said, I got plenty of other mead stories, but like that was like the first real big issue I had brewing. Like, not saying I didn't have any issues prior to that, but like that was probably the one where it's not a minor issue as Webster tried to tell us. It's definitely not a minor issue. I cleaned that kitchen for days.
I mean, it's like having a pumpkin spice air freshener in your kitchen. That's
Who
not
wants
bad,
that?
right?
Who wants that? I mean, pumpkin spice is a good flavor.
There are people who want that.
All those girls dress up as Han Solo. Yes, they would want that.
Okay, so
yeah. Now, what's your first story?
So my first misadventure is centered around the beer that has come to be known as Sad Panda Pale Ale.
Oh, I've heard that.
Yes. So this is, you will recall from the vocabulary.com definition of a misadventure. Some misadventures are only embarrassing while others are exhausting and sad. Well, strap in because this series of tragedies will exhaust and sadden you like nothing has since the movie adaptation of Les Miserables. So this was back in college in the dorm, or excuse me, not in the dorm. In
I was about to say you wouldn't be allowed to do that in the dorm.
Okay, but in my apartment, this was me and my roommate Mike. We had been, like I said, we brewed a lot. We had been dealing with this issue where our beer it wasn't coming out with like off flavors. It was just kind of thin and runny and just sort of underwhelming. We'd had this problem like 2 or 3 batches in a row. I don't know why. I think we probably weren't. Well, we won't get into the technical aspects of it, but we're having this problem. So we thought we'd figured it out. We wrote a recipe for this pale ale, this dry hopped pale ale, and we nailed it. I mean, like it was still to date probably in the top 3 like the best beers that I've ever made. It was delicious right out of the gate. So drinkable, so flavorful. The body was there, and we were serving out of like a converted mini fridge, like a kegerator. So we would keg our beer, and then we had the tower coming out the top with the tap system, so we could we could basically serve ourselves draft beers. And so we had a very celebratory night. The night we tapped the keg for the first time. We probably each had several of them.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right. And that turned out to be a very good thing because so we're in an apartment. We're on the 2nd floor. This only just now is occurring to me. We never thought to check on the neighbors downstairs, but we wake up in the morning and walk into the kitchen. We're making coffee, and we just kind of start to notice this scent. This kind of, that stale beer scent. Like if you spill a beer or you leave a beer out, the next morning you don't clean it up, you don't finish it. It's like,
I lived in a fraternity house. I know that smell.
You know that scent, right? So we kind of smelled that, and we were like, "Oh, that's weird." Like, we definitely finished our glasses last night. Like, are we forgetting something? Did people come over? They didn't finish their beer. So
how much did you actually have?
So we start looking around for a culprit, and we figure, well, maybe some spilled on the fridge, and we're smelling it on the fridge. We walk over there, and just the carpet just sogs underneath us, and So it turns out that there was a leak somewhere in the liquid line. And so where the kind of tap line connected to the keg, there was a small leak. And since it was pressurized throughout the night, the entire rest of the 5 gallons of beer leaked out, dripped out of the kegerator all over the carpet.
Oh man, that was my gasp if you didn't hear it. Oh.
Yeah. It was rough. We both had class that day. So the worst of it was, we like frantically got what we could with paper towel and then left it there because we had to go to class for like the next 8 hours. So it sat there for 8 more hours. So it turned out we ended up having to rent a carpet cleaner like for the day. We had to go over this like entire section of our apartment like 3 or 4 times. It came out, thank God. I know that is not a guarantee with beer like this. We eventually got it out. But it was just like, that sucked. Having to pay for, the carpet cleaner rental sucked because we were poor college kids. But like the worst thing was just like, we had this beautiful, gorgeous beer and we lost like probably like, 40 pints of it.
Now, this was a kit or was this something you guys kind of put together? So you guys actually made this?
My roommate Mike wrote this recipe.
Okay.
And yeah, it was, so that was the other thing is it was made from scratch. I don't remember the particulars of it, but like we wrote it from scratch. We kind of conferred on the hops we were going to use. And like, we just, like everything about it was just a resounding success. And then it was like, we had one great night and then it was gone forever.
So if you had the recipe, why didn't you just make it again?
So we did. Funny you ask. So we made a second attempt at it immediately. We went, you know what? No, we do not accept this. This was a good beer. We'll just make it again. We had to dump it. I don't know what happened. I don't know if we if we weren't sanitary enough. We generally are pretty good about sanitation, but I don't know if we got some kind of bacterial infection that like miscolored the beer. I don't know if it oxidized or like where the flavor came from, but like it wasn't the same beer. We each drank, I think, 2 pints of it and did the thing, this is me sipping. It's not bad. It's young. You know what? It's young. Yeah. It needs to mellow a little bit. So we finished one. You want another? Yeah, I could do another. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Give it one more try.
We got about halfway through that second beer and I just looked at Mike and I went, this is bad, right? And he went, I don't want to finish this. This is awful. We ended up having to dumped the rest of that pint and we ended up having to dump the whole keg. And after that, we kind of got superstitious for a while. We never made it again. And so,
I feel like this is a recipe you should try and resurrect.
Do you have my notes in front of you? So that's the final nail in the coffin. Years later, and I'm fuzzy on the details of this because it was just short text conversation, but I texted Mike because other Mike, my roommate Mike, because I wanted this recipe because I did want to try and make it again. And I believe because we both went to Lawrence Tech and they have a laptop checkout program. And if I remember what happened right, he just hadn't transferred those recipes off when he returned his computer when he was done being a student. So that hard drive has since been wiped clean, re-imaged, and given to, some dewy-eyed new freshman incoming student.
18-year-old, yep.
And so not only, were we not able to recreate the magic, but the ability to recreate that magic is gone forever. Very sad.
I had one similar to that where like I made it and it turned out like it was the first time I went off recipe and it was an IPA, a nice little session, and turned out really, 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 really well. And I did not write it down like at all. Did not know what I did at all to make this recipe. And I brought this
flying by the seat of your pants.
Yeah, it really was. And it was so good. Like, I mean, whether he was being polite or actually astonished by the beer, I don't know. My wife's uncle, who helped at a brewery at the time, I brought a sample for him and he looked at me. He's like, it would not count as an IPA because it has other flavors at the time. But if you entered this as a hybrid, you could win gold. And I was like, oh my God, I got to find this recipe again. And I could not figure it out to save my life. And thankfully, I was able to mostly resurrect it. It is now one of my flagship beers that I do. Is just a session IPA with tangerine peels. And that's really it. But it's really, really good. I make it. But like, it was a simple, I feel like it's a simpler one to try and make.
But you'll never know if it's quite the same
recipe. Exactly, true. But again, like I at least kind of had an idea what the recipe was. That sounds like you didn't even know what it was.
Well, and yeah, like during that time, like I said, I was kind of the Padawan. I participated and, helped, but my roommate really had way more experience than me. And so generally when it came to recipe writing, like I said, he discussed with me, we had some good conversation about it, but like he was the one with a way better handle on like combining hop flavors and stuff. And so I don't even remember I could guess, but I don't even remember what the ingredients were, let alone the proportions. So
is that how they got the name Sad Panda? Because you guys lost it?
Well, so we named it Sad Panda after the first chapter of the incident. And then, the name has only earned itself more and more and more.
A cursed beer.
And now, yes, Sad Panda, sadly, is become one of those. I think it'll be one of those funny things, like because I'll never be able to have it again, I will always probably, it may not, I don't know, it may have just been okay. It may have just been so much better than the last 3 we'd made, but like in my brain, it'll always be like one of the best beers I've ever made because it was like one magical night.
Yes, one magical night.
One magical night.
And no one will believe you.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of a Cinderella beer story.
Exactly. Well, okay, so on that bummer of a note, I think we are going to take a short break. We want to get the point across that we're human like everybody else. We don't want this to come off as a podcast where we are like experts being authoritative. And also, we think that this side of home brewing, the disasters, like the kind of, it's all part of the culture and it's fun and it's good as a new home brewer, I think, to hear about these types of things from other people, to know that it's okay and that it happens to everyone. And when we return, we will get to hear from Ryan again.
Yes, and this is another fun story. I love this story as well. And my old roommate and
I need a little bit of schadenfreude. I'm feeling down now. I need to laugh at your expense. I'm ready
thanks
to
a lot. So we're gonna take a quick break, and we'll be back.
Hey, this is TC.
And this is Jim from the Studio Demands It podcast.
Where every episode we take a demand from a hypothetical studio,
which could be you,
and challenge ourselves to conceptualize, pitch, and craft a film based on the stipulations
or the demands
we are given. We talk about movies all the time. Particularly, we complain about the choices made in the films we've seen.
We're nerds like that.
And, of course, like any good nerd does, we automatically assume that we could do better.
Even with the demands and restrictions that clearly must have been put on by a production.
So head on over to studiodemandsit.com and listen to our previous library of episodes. Our library of previous episodes. Our precious library, Jim. Our library of precious episodes.
You're a pirate, Smeagol.
Okay. So head on over to studiodemandsit.com to listen to our library of episodes.
And submit your demand for a future episode, too.
So go do that.
Okay, bye.
Okay, end of ad.
All right, and we are back from break. Ryan, I'm still feeling a little down after my story. Lighten my mood here. Let's hear
I'll
your
give you
second.
something to laugh at. So this one is a fun story because there's very, very different elements to this. So This was the third beer we made. My roommate and I, Matt, and I still am bitter at him for this to this day. So if you're listening to this, Matt, I'm still bitter.
Still haven't forgiven you.
So, like I said, this was the third beer that we made. And at this time we were bottling, which if you bottle beer, it is a pain. It is such a pain because you have to, unless you have a machine like
it's
a
long
brewery,
process.
You have this like clamp machine that you just have to do every individual bottle. And when you do 5 gallons, that's 50 bottles of beer.
Well, and even just filling them with the beer takes a long time. You got to be super particular. It spills everywhere while you're transferring between.
So I was given a clone recipe for a particular beer that a particular brewery that is part of a particular family brews. I can't go into details because I was sworn to secrecy and I can't say what the beer is.
Needless to say, it is a beer that you love.
It is a beer I love. Okay. And I will say what type of beer.
Say no more.
I will say what type of beer it is. It is a Belgian triple. So.
But I can't imagine what you're talking about.
I don't know. No one knows. So, we went through this whole brewing process. Everything was going swell. So, we brewed on the main day. We ended up using a blow-off valve. For those who don't know, that's if you have way too much sugar, which a Belgian triple does.
It's like a 8 to 10% ABV beer.
It'll knock you out real quickly.
Like one's like 3 Bud Lights.
Yeah. 3 Bud Lights at the same time you're drinking. Right. But so with a blow-off valve, you literally have a tube because it's so much pressure into like a giant mug of water. If you ever go into like a microbrewery or any brewery that does that, you will see like a giant like 10-gallon jug of water, and you see a tube going into it, and you just see it bubbling crazily the whole time because that's all that's the alcohol being made, as they say right there. The bubble, every bubble is alcohol made
vigorously.
Yes,
vigorously being made.
We brewed it, we fermented it, we bottled it, and we waited 2 weeks. I'm impatient when it comes to this stuff.
That's another thing that sucks about bottling.
Yes, you have to wait 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Ugh.
We'll talk about that later. But like, bottling sucks. Don't do it. Spend the extra money in keg.
Do it if you want. But it requires patience, which I think we both lack. Yeah.
So, cracked the first one open, took a drink, flat.
Uh-oh.
So I'm like, okay, maybe let's do another week. Maybe there's something weird. So
maybe there's something wrong with that one.
Yeah, exactly. So let us sit for another week. Got it out, cracked it, took a drink, flat. I'm like, what the heck is going on? I asked my roommate, Matt, Matt, what's wrong with this beer? You bottled. Like, what's going on? He's like, I don't know. When you bottle beer, like when you are doing this part to carbonate the beer, when you keg, you're putting CO2 in it. Yeah. It does the job for you.
Hooking up a gas line to a pressurized canister of CO2.
Yeah. When you bottle, you use something called priming sugar. It's just little sugar you put into it before you bottle, and then it carbonates in the bottle.
Yeah. Basically, the yeast that are still in suspension eat up that sugar, produce the CO2 in the closed bottle, but they produce unlike Ryan's Story 1,
yes.
They produce a calculated amount of CO2 to carbonate the beer within that bottle.
They tell you like how much beer you made and how strong you think it might be. They tell you like how much priming sugar really to put into it.
They being an online calculator.
Or the recipe itself. So I looked at him, I go, hey, did you put the priming sugar in it? And he goes, the what? I'm like, we've done this before. We've done the priming sugar. Why? What happened? And he's like, I don't know. He just forgot about it.
Brain fart.
Brain fart.
You suck.
So we had 5 gallons of flat beer.
Of delicious flat beer.
Yes. It was very delicious. I cooked with it. It was very, very good for cooking with.
Probably make some on-point beer bread with it. Or maybe some beer cheese.
Cheese, there you go. But here's to add more insult to injury, in which I found this out later. I was telling the story to someone, and they looked at me, and it's like, well, why didn't you just crack them all open, pour them back into your bucket, add the priming sugar, rebottle, and then wait 2 more weeks and have beer? And I looked at him, and I was like, son of a... Oh, crap.
Bench.
Yeah, son of a bench for those underage. For my niece who might be listening one day.
Oh God, I hope not.
I hope not. So insult to injury. Like 5 years later, someone told that to me when I was telling the story, and it upsets me now. And I have not attempted this beer again. I have the recipe still. I have not attempted it.
You're saving it.
Well, again, sworn to secrecy. I cannot. I was told, literally in the message, if I share this, I will be killed. I know my uncle, the person who gave me this thing. I won't say any more information.
Edit that out.
But I am sworn to secrecy. I cannot tell you the name of the beer or where it's from or anything else. I can give you what I've given you so far.
You're being one of those people that like won't tell the secret, but I'll sure talk about how I can't tell it for half an
I know,
hour.
right? It adds to the story, gives you suspense.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So that was probably my first misadventure ever right there. And it wasn't even really my fault. It was my roommate's fault. And again, Matt, if you're listening to this, I'm still bitter. So, do you feel slightly better after your sad panda story?
No, I'm just sad for you now. This episode's really a bummer.
I know, right?
No.
Everyone else is laughing
it's
at us
funny.
right now. But
and I have met Matt several times. As we said in the intro, in case this was lost in translation, Ryan and I both married into the same family. So we are like brothers-in-law or something.
yeah, brothers-in-law.
Or just brothers. But yeah, so I know this person.
You do know.
I can imagine it, and it's pretty funny imagining the just look of, oh dear mother of God, what have I done? On his
Exactly,
face.
yes.
Okay, well.
So now, brighten up my mood a little bit and tell me your next story.
This one, of my two, this is the one that I can now, instead of looking back with one manly tear, I can look back at and laugh. So this was the first batch that Haley and I ever brewed at our house. So this was after the hiatus. This was coming back. What was it's not The Rookie. There's that baseball movie where the dude's like out for a long time and then he comes back. The Natural. I don't know. Whatever. Who cares? Who cares? Yeah. But in any event, yeah, this was me like, pulling the Brett Favre, pulling the Michael Jordan, coming out of retirement back into brewing after probably, I don't know, 2 or 3 years. It had been a long time. It was also, this will become relevant, it was spring in Michigan. So we're both located. We both live in the Detroit area. And so for, anyone else in the Midwest, you know how it gets. It gets fairly cold and then it stays that way. Snow falls and then it stays that way. And there's this big, long, fat winter and then things thaw out and our spring can begin again. So we were brewing in the early spring. And thus it was the first time we were using our hose. So not saying if that matters to the story, but it's just a fact, just
remember that.
Providing
remember that
context.
little tidbit.
So, we were making an amber ale. We did a very clever double entendre. We called it Firstborn because we had just recently had, or we're about to have our first child. I don't even remember anymore because I don't know.
What a horrible father.
I know when she was born. I don't know when the beer was made.
Okay.
It was either no. It has to have been. Doesn't matter. But yeah. So it was named in honor of our first child. Also, it was the first beer we'd brewed at the house. Thank you. So, Firstborn Amber Ale. Mm-hmm. We did the whole brewing process, and basically once you're done, you have to, I don't want to get into it too much, but basically at the end you have this very hot mixture of like sugars from the grain and hop compounds that you have to chill rapidly down to a temperature where yeast can survive, so you can add the yeast and they can ferment all those sugars into alcohol.
Make your alcohol, yep.
So that is often done using, generally done using something called a wort chiller, because the liquid at that point is called wort. You are chilling it. So we use one. It is an immersion chiller. So it's basically this big loop, this spiral of copper pipe that you attach to a hose, and you run hose water through it, and the cold hose water runs through the pipe, and you set that copper pipe in the beer, and the cold water in the pipe cools the warm beer outside of the pipe.
And it flushes out.
And then it just, the water just flushes out somewhere else. So we're just like dumping it into the lawn. So we're doing this in the backyard. First time using our food grade hose. Hook that up, seems fine. We hook up the wort chiller, that seems fine. We sanitize it, we dunk it in there. That seems fine. We turn it on. Psh, water's coming out. Great, like success. We've got our temperature. we're watching the temperature drop. It's dropping pretty rapidly because that it happens fast at the beginning, and then as the beer gets cooler, it slows down achingly slow. So we spend, I don't know, 5 minutes watching it, just like glorying in the process of making
the first
sweet,
one.
sweet
I'm about to
homebrewed
say
beer.
yes.
So then I open my door wall to step into my house, and I step into water. My first step in the house, sploosh. And I just go, we have a dog, and we keep the dog bowl right by the water. So I was like, this seems like a lot of water. And then I take a look around, and oh dear mother of God, half of our kitchen is submerged. Like there's water everywhere. Like it's basically what happened is we had one of those connections to our hose where it's like it comes back into the house, and it's supposed to prevent your hose line from freezing. Well, it didn't do that. And apparently on like first snow, like when the first temperature drop happened, our hose wasn't cleared out enough full of water. Yep. So it all froze. It cracked something in that line. I ended up finding it later. It was the copper spigot that comes back into the house just had this rupture.
Oh.
So it's literally it's the part that's sitting in our cupboard is just open. So as soon as we turn the water on, inside it just started coming out. We didn't notice it. Mm-hmm. We used every towel in the house. And like we have a pile of dog towels. We have a pile of old shower towels from like when we moved in, and then a pile of better shower towels. Every towel in the house. I was throwing t-shirts. Like there was so much water. So at first we were just like, it's fine. The towels will take care of it. We'll just keep going. Everything will be okay.
Who thought that idea?
Me.
Of course.
So like 3 minutes went by, and then I went, this is a horrible idea. It's not going to work. It's leaking past the towels. So we had to turn it off. Our entire kitchen at this point is a soppy towel. So we had to carry the beer into the bathtub. We start filling the bathtub full of cold water. It's still got like 30, 40 degrees to go or something. All this took place really quickly. I know I talked about it for probably as long as it happened, but everything slows down when you're freaking out. So we bring it in the bathtub. We dump all of our ice, which is like,
not much.
3 trays. It's like 24 ice cubes into the bathtub. So we're like, oh, what else do we have? So we grab all of our ice packs. So there's these like 4 penguin-shaped ice packs floating in the tub, and then this, like 2 or 3 random others. They're all just kind of floating around with some ice.
Throw some Scotch rocks in there.
Yeah, the Scotch rocks did go in. Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think maybe threw some like cold beers in, and like LaCroix and like unopened cans of stuff from the refrigerator, and we threw everything we could at this, and I was just with the giant brewing ladle just stirring it around, and of course, like the first few brews, at least for me, I don't know if you had this experience, but like I just worried and split hairs about everything. It was like, oh God, our temperature's off by 1 degree. The beer is going to be ruined. And then I'd spend 10 minutes looking online and go, no, the beer's fine. And so this one I was like, oh my God, it's, taking 2 hours to chill our wort. The beer's going to be ruined. It was fine. It turned out good. But I spent this whole time just freaking out going like, oh dear God, like, what are we going to do? We ended up, we were doing this thing where like the bathtub would warm up a little bit. So we drain a little bit, pour a little bit more in, drain a little bit. We'd like, we're filling our ice cube trays full of water, letting it get like kind of cold, and just dumping the water in.
Could someone have ran to the store and got bags of ice?
I don't remember if we did that or if we thought of that or what.
Or not, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, hindsight's 2020.
Yes, that could have happened. I don't know if it did. It may have been that by then Haley had just talked me off the ledge and like made me understand like it will be fine. Yeah. I looked it up online. They said like 4 to 5 hours or something.
Honestly, I actually know people I actually am one of these people when they first start brewing, they do that. That's how they cool their beer is in a sink or in a tub with a bunch of bags of ice, moving it around, doing the best you can to cool it down. Yeah. Because they don't have an immersion cooler like that or anything else.
We had to do it twice because I believe the second time I either hadn't fixed that yet, and we just kind of knew, and maybe we did buy a bag of ice then. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we had to do it the second time.
It's
I did
not
it.
fun.
I did it in the
It's really
sink,
not.
and that was a little better because as soon as the ice melted, you could just add more ice. It was like, I don't know. Well, anyway, everything turned out fine. It was a good beer.
It was a great beer.
It was a good beer, and now we can all laugh about
Yes,
it.
exactly.
But yes, that was a thing that happened, and we've had, I remember there was an episode of How I Met Your Mother where there's like a wedding, and they talk about the bump, where there's always a bump in the road.
Yes.
And so something small happens, and you're like, good, this is our bump. Like, I thought for that day there had already been a bump. I don't remember what it was, but it was really minor, and I was like, oh, good, this is our bump, and now we're good.
And then all hell broke loose.
No. But I will say, like, probably our first 3 or 4 brews, there was some sort of a bump.
Hey, like
That one was just the biggest. That one was more like a large hill.
yeah, it's a learning experience. Like, I have friends who got into brewing, even ourselves. We've learned from our wonderful misadventures and mistakes, and hope we say better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And part of the reason that we decided to open with this topic is hopefully not so that anyone who listens will decide that we are bad brewers and untrustworthy and that they shouldn't listen to us. But I think it's important to acknowledge that these things happen. They're funny. They should,
yes.
even like joking aside with the sad panda, like it's all funny. And it's stuff that happens. It's part of the experience, and it can be intimidating when you're a new home brewer going on blogs and listening to podcasts where you feel like that's kind of the Instagram version of everybody, where it's like they're all presenting sort of the best version of themselves because they're trying to offer advice, and that's good. But I know for me, it scared me into thinking like I can't make a mistake. No one else is making mistakes, and. Yeah, they all are.
And you also got to realize too,
and
like,
it's funny to laugh about.
You are on beer 1. A lot of those guys, if you go to any site, are on beer 1001. Like, they've brewed there for the past 20 years, and they are like they have made their own setups. Even like I'm not even close to that. Like, I don't even have a crazy setup. I keep it as simple as possible, and especially when I first homebrewed, the first 2 are kits. Like, I had no issue doing kits at the time. Kits are easy, and I have a friend who still brews, and he still lives by kits, and he's been brewing for about 3 years. So you brew what you want.
If your process is
good,
good,
keep it simple sometimes.
There's smart people making those kits.
Exactly, and they're good beers. Like, the first one was the very first beer I made was an Irish vanilla, and it was a kit. You had the vanilla bean, you had everything in this kit. You brewed it like a red, and you put the vanilla in at the end, and then you. Done. And it was a great beer. I loved it. It was a perfect beer.
Right. So yeah. If you're going to take anything back from this episode, we hope you take back that mistakes happen and you should laugh about them, and then you should send your story to us. Yes. We'd love to hear about it.
We would love. And then at the end of all that, you learn.
Right. And then you learn. Yeah.
Alanis Morissette.
Learn and don't let it happen.
Alanis Morissette said it best. You live, you learn. Just do that. So,
on that note, Alanis Morissette, we would also love to hear about your favorite pieces of Misadventure Media, if there were any great ones that we missed.
Yes.
If you would like to send any of this to us, you can find us both on Twitter at Brewthers-in-Law. That's Brew, BREW, THERS in law. All one word, no hyphens, no spaces. So, and then Ryan, I believe there are some other places that people can reach you personally.
Yes, I am also heavily into Twitter. I am at Rambo Kuhn. That's RAMBOKUHN. My stuff that I brew, I put online as well. It's Wise Old Owls Brew. And then I also do a blog just for fun. And that's hopsbrewandblog.com. So hop. Brew and blog, all one word.
One hop,
one
brew, one blog.
Yes. So
one ring. Rule them all.
If you have anything you want to say, you can reach out. You're not on anything, correct? You're not on Twitter yet. Besides,
no, I'm still not on Twitter.
We'll get you there.
Just hit me up at the podcast Twitter account. I will happily respond.
Yes. And like, send your responses, send your stories. We'd love to hear it, and we'll share it with everyone else too. So we'll do that and keep going. So.
Until next time.
Yep. Till next time. Cheers.